Over the last year, we've seen the effect of money matters on employees' wider health and well-being brought into sharp relief. From shifts in income and spending habits driven by COVID-19 lockdowns to broader trends such as retirement patterns and more fluid job markets, employees' long and short-term financial well-being is now more important than ever. Aviva's recent Thriving in the Age of Ambiguity report found that 39% of employees say their financial situation is affecting their mental health, with clear consequences for individuals' well-being and their engagement at work. So in this series of 3 videos, together with Aviva, we'll be exploring the findings from the report and how they shape the business case for financial well-being. I'm joined today by Laura Stewart-Smith, Head of Workplace Savings and Retirement at Aviva, and Debbie Bullock, Head of Wellbeing at Aviva, to explore the impact of financial well-being on employees and employers. So if you'd like to jump ahead to specific sections within this video, you'll see that the video timeline is divided into separate named sections, and there's a quick reference here at the bottom of the screen. So Laura, I'd like to ask you to begin with to set the scene for us by explaining what we mean by financial well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for having me, Maggie. In the latest report, Thriving in the Age of Ambiguity, we've been looking at how the financial can play a really strong part in an individual's overall well-being. When we talk about financial well-being, it's about individuals having a real sense of security from the feeling that they've got enough money to meet their needs. But it's also about having control of day-to-day finances and having the financial freedom to make choices that allow individuals to enjoy their life both right now, but also in the future.
How has the pandemic affected people's financial well-being? And what differences have you seen pre and post-pandemic?
So the COVID-19 experience has fundamentally altered our relationship with money, the way in which we use money, the way in which we view money. Whether or not people will have been personally impacted by COVID, they're likely to know someone who has or be aware of the impact perhaps from the news or TV. The research tells us that 24% of employees felt like they made a bad decision about debt over the last 18 months. But we do also know that 2 in 5 employees say that the pandemic has had a positive impact on their ability to save. Not surprisingly, that is not the case for all. And for those coming from the retail and hospitality sectors, they have been more negatively affected, with around 16% saying that it's really affected their ability to save. We've probably seen the 2 extremes to a certain extent. Some businesses have been hit hard. Typically, as I say, that's your retail and your leisure type of organisations, and they may well have had to lay people off, or perhaps people who were on 0-hour contracts have not been getting the work that they have been previously. That may well have left a number of people struggling to pay their bills and in financial difficulties. So for those people who have been able to continue to work with nowhere to go and little to spend their money on, the latest Bank of England figures suggest that we've added a significant amount of money to household savings. But having said that, as I said earlier, financial well-being isn't necessarily about having money in your pocket right now. It's about feeling in control and having a level of certainty around the future. And that can be difficult for anyone to have in the current climate.
So do you think the pandemic has affected people's levels of financial awareness? And if they are becoming more conscious of the significance of money, how can employers help them to improve their financial well-being?
Yes, although, as I said, I think the financial experience in the UK for employees has been a tale of 2 halves. Some will have been able to boost their well-being by saving more. As we saw large parts of the economy closed across the UK, it's understandable that there will be a significant number of people who will have had their income reduced or perhaps facing larger debts. I think you would have had to have been living under a rock over the last 12 months to not see that impact that will have been in place on some people's finances. I think the really scary part for a lot of people is that they probably didn't see this coming. They may well have had really strong financial well-being going into this crisis. We found that well-paid professionals who have never had to budget before in a challenging financial predicament. To address this crisis, a large number of employers kind of rallied around to support their employees. They looked at developing workplace wellbeing packages or perhaps modifying existing arrangements they already had in place. Most employers were astute enough to recognise that whilst they might not be putting people on furlough or cutting hours or reducing income, that doesn't mean that their employees weren't impacted because somebody else in their household was going through that experience. It's really important for employers to remember that a well-rounded wellbeing offering will consider several different elements, and one of them is absolutely financial.
That's great. Many thanks, Laura. I'd like to broaden the conversation out a little bit and make the connection between financial and mental well-being that you've identified in the report findings. So, Debbie, if I can come to you and talk a little more about what the link is between financial well-being and physical or mental well-being.
Financial well-being is intrinsically linked to physical and mental well-being. I often describe it as three legs on a three-leg stool. If all three elements are there, your stool is stable and sustainable and you can sit on it for any length of time. But remove one of those legs, whether that be financial, mental or physical well-being, and you get an instability. And that's true for people's well-being. If an employee or anyone is under financial stress, it can have a negative impact on their mental health, their relationships, their performance. In fact, people with poor financial well-being are 5 times more likely to be depressed and nearly 4 times more likely to suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. But the link works the other way as well, because people with mental ill health challenges are 3.5 times more likely to be in problem debt. So it can actually become a vicious circle. So it's intrinsically linked. And it's not just mental well-being. Money worries can also bring real physical well-being challenges. Just one example is the impact it can have on your sleep. So if you're worried about your finances, you might not be sleeping properly, sleepless nights, or you could be having gut health issues as you worry, which creates digestion issues. And sleep, digestion, and all those broader things impact your physical health, which impacts your ability to function effectively. As we've already mentioned, 39% of employees in the Thriving in the Age of Ambiguity research say that their financial situation is impacting their mental health. And interestingly, 26% said their current level of debt is detrimental to their overall well-being. But as well as the negative impact on the individual, from an employer perspective, what you've got to realize is that impact to the well-being can actually have a negative impact on the business, because it can lead to lower productivity levels, absenteeism, which all creates a challenge for the employer.
And we've touched a little on some of the findings from the report. I wonder whether you could tell me a little more about what the report found about employees' current mental and physical health.
Yeah, I think some of the strongest figures that came out of the report for me was the fact that over half of employees believe that boundaries between work and home are blurring, with just under half saying they now regularly check work emails after hours. And that's going to have a massive impact on people's well-being. And it has a knock-on effect in their personal terms as well, because 2/3 of employees are saying they're now neglecting their physical well-being because they're too busy at work. And while you could say that that's always been the case, people's busy work lives means they put their physical well-being on the side, what we have seen is that has increased by 11% since we first did the research. So so people are doing that more often. And the same applies to mental well-being. Again, about 2/3 of employees say they are ignoring their mental well-being because they're just too busy. And that's an even bigger rise since summer last year, with 14% saying that 14% more saying that that's the case. And that has a really potential worrying picture for the long-term well-being, because if you're not addressing your physical and mental well-being right now, that can lead to more problems in the future. There's a regular phrase that well-being practitioners often use, which is, if you don't make time for your wellness, you will have to make time for your illness. And I think that's something that could really happen if we don't start looking at that, how we prioritize our own well-being.
From talking with reward directors and through research we've done at REBA, many employers find getting started with financial well-being difficult. It can be an incredibly wide-ranging and multidisciplinary topic. But what are some of the first steps employers can take to help support their employees' financial well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. People are concerned about financial well-being and perhaps consider it to be quite a complex topic. It doesn't necessarily need to be. One of the first things that I would encourage employers to do is to allow their employees to know it's okay to talk. So we talk a lot about mental health and physical health, but actually in many ways, talking about money is still kind of the last taboo in our society. We don't like to admit that we're not very good with money. We don't like to admit that we don't understand how to perhaps use our money best. And even for those employees who are quite comfortable openly talking about other topics, they may still feel uncomfortable mentioning the M word as such. So encourage your employees to have that conversation. I appreciate for some workforces, they won't feel that they're equipped to deliver that. They may well want to bring in a third party to do that. And you may find that employees might be more willing to talk to an external organisation or an external financial expert than perhaps someone they're in day-to-day contact with. But giving people the opportunity to discuss issues such as debt and financial commitments won't make it go away, but it should help to ease some of the stress that individuals are suffering. Now, for some organisations, their budget won't stretch to that. And there are still things you can do. So basic signposting to resource that is available widely from the government, such as the Money Advice Service, is still going to add value. An employer is considered a trusted partner. So the fact that the employer is signposting to these services will be really useful for those that need that additional support. The second thing that I would think about would be to make sure that your workplace benefits are working as hard as they possibly can for you. So it can be really helpful to reinforce for individuals what is available to them as part of their benefits package. They need to know what's on offer. They need to know the benefits of it. An example of this would be workplace pensions. So it's really helpful for people to understand what they're getting. It's helpful for them to understand what's available from their employer, what's available in terms of benefits that they have as being part of that pension arrangement. The latest report suggested that 47% of those surveyed said they didn't know how they would plan for their retirement. Now, most workplace pension providers will have ready-made online tools and informative campaigns which they can use to try and support this. Although that's not necessarily going to solve the right here and right now, it is still a really important part of giving individuals a sense of control around their future. And with the report suggesting that 41% said that being able to retire at the age they wanted to was a real concern for them, there's got to be a level of value in employers taking the time to look at this. And then the final point that I would make is tell them again and tell them again. So it leads to another really strong way of promoting what you have available. A really good communication program can make the difference between somebody not accessing their benefits package and being really familiar with it and utilizing it at the right times. So you can hold regular events. You can make sure that employees are familiar with what's on offer. You can make information available, on your internet. You can make it available via manager meetings. Any opportunity that you get to reinforce what's on offer to the employees is one that should be taken. A lot of employers will make the mistake that information is readily available, perhaps on a company internet, and assume that employees will know to go to that port of call in time of crisis. But actually, that's not necessarily always the case. And we would encourage you to publicise as much as possible the support that you have available to your employees. I think it's probably fair to say that workplace financial education is no longer considered a nice to have. It's become increasingly important for employees and to a certain extent expected. It will be a fundamental pillar of any wellbeing strategy. And again, it's worth going back to your employee benefits providers to understand what they've got available. So, for example, Aviva offers a midlife MOT. That midlife MOT is not only available to our staff, but it's also available to our workplace pension clients. And it's aimed at helping people to understand a bit more about debt, savings and pensions. So by initiating that conversation, you could well be unlocking something to support your financial wellbeing package.
And I'd like to come to you, Debbie, and ask a little bit about what Aviva's done to support its own staff around this. And from your own experiences, what tips you'd have for other employers?
Yeah, so financial wellbeing plays a really important part of Aviva's overall wellbeing strategy and programme. And we have a number of financial education resources available to colleagues. So we run seminars on everything from basic budgeting, buying a house, to understanding what a credit score is. And as Laura says, while that doesn't have to be about individual plans, by providing a wide range of events like this, covering various different topics, it enables colleagues to dip into those that are interest to them, that are relevant to what's happening in their lives at the time, or the information that they want to hear. And that means they can personalise the financial education to suit them. And similarly, we make sure that those events are recorded. So again, going back to personalisation, you might not want to know about that now, but there might come a time in the future. So we record our seminars and our information support so people can listen back at a time that suits them or a life stage that suits them. And in addition to those sort of like basic apply to everyone, we also provide 3 life stage financial wellbeing events. That's one around early careers, as Laura mentioned, the midlife MOT, and also My Retirement My Way. And those events target specific periods in an employee's life and things that they might want to think about from a financial wellbeing perspective at that stage in their career. So it's really important that we provide a range of things, and that's backed up in Aviva by having access to a number of policies and benefits that support our colleagues. So having a flexible benefits system that colleagues can use to turn benefits on and off to support their financial well-being. And we work with our benefits providers as well to see what other financial education support they offer. And we also signpost to things like the Money Advice Service, where relevant to debt support charities, but also our employee assistance program provides colleagues with support for financial wellbeing issues or debt management issues that they might have. So if it turns, and again, this is where that link is from financial wellbeing and mental and physical wellbeing. So if there's an impact from financial wellbeing into mental wellbeing, the service that the employee assistance program provide can be really, really powerful in that space. As for tips, I'd echo what Laura said. Speak to your employee benefits provider, see what's offered. And the other thing is actually ask your colleagues first and foremost. Ask your employees what support they think they need. You might not be able to do all of it, but have an indication of what their needs are and then help to address those. And that means it's truly inclusive of what they need, and we'll get a better result and better engagement from that.
So thank you so much to Laura and Debbie for your time and insights today and exploring some of the thinking involved in setting up a financial wellbeing strategy. So there are more tips to support businesses as they build the business case for financial wellbeing in Aviva's report, Thriving in the Age of Ambiguity. And we'll be going into more detail on some of those points as well in our subsequent videos. Many thanks today.